Before we get started with today's video, here's a quick word from our sponsor. Opera GX is the world's first browser for gamers. Are you a gamer? Here's a browser for you. Lots of browsers can be a surprising and annoying drain on your CPU, but at the same time, you don't want to lose your tabs or open and close your browser every time you want to boot up a game. Well, that's what Opera's GX control is great for. You can actually limit how much CPU and RAM your browser is allowed to use, and not only that, you can even limit your browser's network bandwidth use so you get no frame drops and no lag, even if you're watching videos or listening to music in the background. You can log into Twitch right on the sidebar and get notifications when streamers you follow are live, and loads of messenger apps like Discord and Facebook are right there for you too. If you're worried about all of your data from your current browser being lost, or maybe you've got some old passwords you don't remember but your browser does, don't sweat it. You can use Opera GX's quick import tool to transfer over all of your settings from your current browser, like browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies. You know what, maybe not the browsing history, let's just keep that one between us. Oh yeah, also, built-in ad blocker, built-in VPN to protect your data. Of course you should turn off the ad blocker when watching my videos, obviously. It's even got this GX Corner tab that's great for seeing what kind of games are coming out soon, and even gives you a list of my favorite kinds of games. The ones that don't cost any money. Swallow the sea. Okay, everything I know about the ocean tells me that's a bad idea. There is seriously so much awesome about this browser, I can't fit it all into 90 seconds. Like, it's even available on mobile. Just go download it. Seriously, it's worth it. So thanks once again to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. No, this isn't a bad weapon academy. The Phlogistinator. Everyone's favorite flamethrower? Okay, let's be real, pretty much everyone who doesn't use this thing constantly fucking hates it. I think we all know the feeling of rounding a corner only to stare death itself straight in the face and accept your own inevitable demise. I don't think that many weapons in TF2 are so good at replicating exactly what it feels like when you know you're gonna die and you just have to accept that. Even with a direct hit, a sniper rifle, or a sticky trap, you round a corner and it's instant. Poof, you're gone. What the excuse me?
What?
Fucking demo, man. I just right click and you die instantly. I don't even have to be fucking looking at you. Blah, blah, blah.
Star, calm down.
Didn't you see the bloody bombs?
I did not see the bloody bombs.
Oh, didn't you see the bloody bombs?
With the Phlog, you get a good couple of seconds to see that glowing flamethrower and its particles burning you into a smoldering pile of ashes. Maybe you panic, maybe you try to escape, fight your way out, take the pyro down with you, or maybe you just stand there and let death take you. The end result is the same unless you have a pocket medic with an Uber handy. But why is it so devastating, so punishing? And if that's the case, why does the title of this video call it the Worst Flamethrower? Well, let's take a look. The Phlogistinator has a charge meter called the Oomph meter, and to fully charge it, you need to inflict 300 points of fire damage on the enemy team. Or rather, 300 points of effective fire damage. Yeah, for some reason the Phlog seems to charge based on the effective health of the enemy against fire damage, which is why Dead Ringer spies are basically a free Phlog charge if you manage to track them down. Charging the meter can also be done using any of your weapons, not just the Phlog itself, as long as they deal fire damage. So any of your flare guns, and yes, even enemies lit by the gas passer and sharpened volcano fragment, will charge up your meter with their fire damage and afterburn. Keep in mind with the volcano fragment, the melee hit does not deal fire damage, only the afterburn does. This is not the case for the flare guns, and their crits or mini crits are a very effective way to build up Phlog charge. You can also get your charge through spawn doors on certain maps, which is fucking bullshit, and it's always a good idea to stay away from the spawn doors for this reason. In theory, you could also get charged from reflected projectiles like flares, Dragon's Fury shots, and Cowmangler super shots, but the Phlog is also incapable of air blasting. To make up for this crippling downside, once the meter is full, you can taunt or right-click in order to gain guaranteed critical hits on your Phlog, though not your other weapons, for 10 seconds following the taunt. And while you're taunting at full oomph, you're invulnerable. Or rather, you have a period of invulnerability and crits lasting exactly as long as your taunt. If you manage to cancel out the taunt prematurely, well... The taunt freezes you in place, leaving you fairly vulnerable to things like sticky traps, headshots, and backstabs, which is a fair trade-off, but sometimes the invulnerability can save your life in a pinch. And in accordance with other weapons that get some kind of guaranteed crit or mini crit effect, well, most of them anyway, the Phlog gets no random crits. Look, everyone knows how to use the Phlog. This isn't exactly rocket science, even though the weapon canonically comes from outer space. And honestly, that's kind of one of my biggest problems with the weapon. Not the space thing, the simplicity. The Phlog is incredibly straightforward. In fact, it's too straightforward. Strategy is so incredibly difficult to come by using this thing, and most of the time, the only option you have is the stereotype that many pyro players are universally hated for. Brainless WM1. So let's talk a little bit about Air Blast. When TF2 launched in 2007, pyro didn't have Air Blast. And I'm gonna be honest, that blows my fucking mind. Air Blast is such an integral part to pyro. It's honestly more useful than lighting people on fire in a massive amount of situations. You can get so creative with Air Blast. You can combo with so many weapons to do so many things, use it to push enemies and projectiles around all over the place, and it makes pyro incredibly fun, rewarding, and satisfying to play. Walking forward is walking forward. Like, yeah, if you catch people off guard, it'll work for you, and it's decent for finishing off players already hurt or buttering them up for a finisher with one of your secondaries, but when just using fire is your only option for your flamethrower, you start to see just how limiting WM1 is unless you have a dedicated pocket medic. As much as people like to bitch about pyro and how much WM1 sucks, and how I've seen some people ask for pyro's flamethrower to be nerfed, which is just fucking ridiculous to me, the part they're complaining about is the weakest aspect of the class. WM1 is basically worthless if the pyro is out in the open running towards a team. That is a very easy way to die as a pyro. Where WM1 is at its strongest is in tight corridors when you're ambushing the other team, or better yet, catching them off guard at already low health. In a 1v1 fight, pyro with just fire loses out to nearly every class, depending on the range. At close range, he's like a guaranteed win against the sniper who isn't using the shield of go fuck yourself, and usually spy, sometimes a medic if he's bad with his needle gun, but outside of his flamethrower range, he loses to everything. Unlike the other automatic fire options like the minigun, the pistol, the SMG, or even the syringe guns, the flamethrower has a hard cap on its range, unless you fuck around with some traffic cones or something. What the fuck is... This is why any flare gun, even the man melter, is a huge boon to pyros. The ability to inflict afterburn damage from a distance is incredibly valuable, since at least you can do something outside of flamethrower range, and the damage over time effect will likely be more beneficial than simple shotgun peppering at the range they're effective in. And Air Blast is a huge part of what makes pyro a threat to classes like Soldier, and by extension, everyone around that soldier. Because if a pyro knows how to Air Blast, that soldier shooting rockets is now a liability to his entire team. The dynamic of the entire battlefield completely changes in a way that both players are now in control of. If the soldier is smart, he can fake the pyro out into air blasting too early and take advantage of the small delay between air blasts to secure some damage. Or if he's not confident in his abilities to do so, he can use a shotgun, or he can use a rocket launcher like the direct hit or Liberty launcher to throw off the pyro's timing. The pyro, meanwhile, has a plethora of options once that rocket is fired. He could of course send it right back to the soldier, or maybe to a more valuable target in the same line of sight. Or if he's feeling really ballsy, he can even use the rocket for his own mobility. And all of this comes down to the pyro's timing and aim. If that soldier does decide to use a direct hit, and the pyro is capable of air blasting that consistently, then that soldier's medic is really gonna fucking hate him. If all the pyro can do is walk forward, he'll eat 2 rockets and die. WM1 is far from overpowered. It's just annoying because pyro doesn't need to aim his fire in close quarters combat, while all the other classes do need to actually aim. And in situations where it's most effective, it's likely because you're getting ambushed. And getting ambushed isn't exactly fun to fight against. Due to the all-or-nothing design of a lot of TF2's weapons and the close-range nature of combat, a pyro being able to consistently do at least some damage very easily makes up for the fact that his DPS isn't as high as the other core combat classes. A good scout versus a good pyro will win pretty much every time in a straightforward 1v1, unless the pyro is a god with flares or using one of the shotguns, but a bad scout is going to have a much worse time against even a bad pyro because the skill floor is so low on the pyro's end and so high on the scouts. The Phlog is this system incarnate. It's a fantastic ambush tool, and it works great against bad players. Not so great against the ones that, you know, shoot at the pyro. It's easy to sum up my feelings on the Phlog in regards to team balance because someone else has already done it for me. When you're winning, it's great. When you're losing, ugh. It can be pretty surprising just what a detriment the Phlog can feel like when you're on the losing team. You really start missing that air blast, and even the other flamethrowers that limit your air blasting capacity don't feel nearly as punishing in this regard. For a weapon that is so consistently complained about, I found myself wanting to switch off of it and go back to air blasting constantly. The Phlog lives and dies by momentum and advantage. When you don't have the advantage, it can be slow going getting that charge up. It's like the definition of a pub stomping weapon because it's at its best when you're already stomping and when you have that momentum. If your team is rolling, the other team might have a Phlog pyro and you probably won't even notice the entire match. If your team is the one getting rolled, a Phlog pyro might just feel like the sole reason for that when he melts your entire team on the payload card at once. Good players can still get caught off guard by the Phlog if their teammates suck ass and keep feeding the pyro-free fire damage through no fault of said good players, or through the part of terrible weapon design, but we'll get there when we get there. This means those good players essentially have to play babysitter to their team and keep the Phlog pyro dead as much as possible so that they're not the ones who round a corner only to come face to face with a pyro with guaranteed crits. It's the same issue I talked about with snowballing weapons in the Bizarre Bargain video. However, this is rarely going to be the case if the pyro is just using the Phlog on its own, or rather without some other weapon that's granting him fire damage. There's a reason you don't see Phlog pyros running the shotguns. Not that it's unusable, since the Phlog's focus on fire damage means fire-resistant targets like other pyros, demo knights, and danger shield snipers are going to be a massive pain in the ass, but it means you're gimping yourself out of your primary's main function for the sake of countering these specific targets. This is actually one of the things I dislike most about the Phlog. It limits how you play dramatically. Unless you have a dedicated pocket medic, you can't just run into an exchange like you normally can with the ability to air blast. You have to hang back. You basically have to equip a flare gun, and you can't even be aggressive with the flare guns. You just sort of take pot shots waiting for your meter to go up so you can finally play the fucking game. And it sucks ass, but it's necessary. Pyro's lack of range, and now lack of air blast with the Phlog, means just about everything is out to get him. Everything zones him out. Oh, is that a heavy? Sorry, try getting that charge somewhere else, we're closed. Sentry? You can't play the game anymore. Soldier? Demo man? Demo fucking knight? Yeah, you go from effortlessly shutting down demo knights with one click to being free demo knight food with the Phlog. Good luck getting through his better than soldier health coupled with ridiculous fire resistance and a charge that eliminates afterburn without your crit charge and pocket medic. Pyro essentially needs to become an ambush class exclusively if he wants to charge up the Phlog with the Phlog, or else play extremely passively and only get his charge from enemies flanking his team like spies, effectively letting the fire damage come to him instead of going out of his way to get it. Seriously, try using the Phlog with a shotgun and then with any flare gun and see the difference of how often you can charge, and you'll see what I mean. Of course, there is a way to be entirely passive, completely safe from harm, and also easily charge up your meter with roughly the same amount of technical effort as walking into people, but you already know where I'm going with this, don't you? If the Scorch Shot didn't exist, I genuinely don't think a single fucking soul would use the Phlog. Maybe some people would with the detonator, but that's it. As I've mentioned in the past, several times now, to the point where it's irritated a lot of people, the Scorch Shot allows you to essentially farm free fire damage on top of about a dozen other things because game design is really hard, effectively meaning you can stand on one corner of the map getting free Phlog charge and having it in your pocket whenever you need it. But if you ask me, this betrays not the strength of the Scorch Shot, which it still does, don't get me wrong, because the Scorch Shot is bullshit, but the weakness of the Phlog. You need to use the strongest and easiest to use pyro secondary as a primary to use the Phlog consistently. In theory, using the flare gun or in some cases the man melter with the Phlog would actually fill up the meter much more quickly because of their higher burst damage, but those actually take aim and no Phlog pyro on the fucking planet knows how to do that. Speaking of the man melter, that's one more thing that having no air blast completely hinders you in: supporting your teammates. If someone is burning to death around you, unless you're using the man melter, you kind of just have to let it happen. So if you're not using any flare gun besides the man melter, constantly hogging your team's medic, and not incinerating half the team or more with every push, you're not just a hindrance to your team, you're a fucking parasite. When I would always see Phlog pyros using the Scorch Shot, I thought it was annoying that they were basically abusing the aggravating strengths of both weapons to become impervious at long range and devastating at close range, but now I see it's more like they needed to abuse the shit out of the Scorch Shot to use the Phlog at all in this capacity. You need the flare gun that can do everything Pyro is already notoriously hated for at any range without needing to try, because without it, the Phlog just lags behind. But with it, and especially with a pocket medic, it's fucking infuriating. Now, it's actually a bit of serendipity that I'm writing the script when I am, because the HiGPS balance mod recently updated and dramatically nerfed the Phlog in this aspect I was just complaining about. It was changed so that it only charged up the oomph meter from the Phlog itself, not your secondaries, or I guess your melee if you're using the volcano fragment. I completely disagree with this change, which sounds weird. I just got done complaining about why this is broken, right? But that's because the Scorch Shot is broken. Nerfing the Phlog because the Scorch Shot makes farming free fire damage so goddamn easy actually reminds me a lot of when Valve nerfed the Extinguisher because Air Blast made stun locking people into an Extinguisher combo too easy. So the overpowered thing is still overpowered, but now a weapon suffers for it because it paired well with the overpowered thing that was being abused. And it's even on the same class too. All a change like this does is punish the hell out of the Phlog in a way that's detrimental to the gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, you can combo this with more skillful secondaries like the flare gun and man melter, and honestly, it's actually pretty fun and a half decent way to train yourself in hitting flares without the need for air blasting someone. I think my flare aim has gotten pretty insane since I started using this thing. I think I'm starting to like the flare gun even more than the detonator now. But if a change like this were to come to the base game, all it would do is completely discourage pyros using the Phlog from ever using their secondaries, because their only option to get Phlog charge is to hold down the fire button against their enemies with the Phlog. And on a combo-centric class like Pyro, that seems like a mistake. Hell, the Phlog already does this to melee. There's no incentive to ever use any of your melees as finishers, and the near reliance on either a pocket medic or overheal in general really discourages use of the back scratcher. Once again, limiting your playstyle. Like HiGPS, my dude, the slower Scorch Shot speed does nothing. It still does way too much shit. Just nerf it more. Do you have a fucking Pyro main on your rebalance team or something? Look, I have a list of potential nerfs here that you can— The Phlog on its own isn't a weapon that's overpowered or underpowered. It's fine where it is now, but maybe it could stand to change a bit. I think something that would be pretty neat is for the oomph meter to have 4 mini charges, kinda like the Vaccinator. Maybe to add a drawback, it could take more fire damage to charge. Let's say 100 damage per mini charge, 400 total. What each individual mini charge will do is give you 1 air blast use. So you could sacrifice some of your fire damage to potentially save your life, or your team's, or to get a combo for even more damage, or save it up until you get your full crit charge. So it still plays just about the same, but there's more variety in how you can play. I think some kind of visual cue on the Phlog when it can air blast would be beneficial, similar to how it has one when it can crit charge now. That way you can tell when a Phlog pyro you're facing has the capacity to send your rockets back to you. Yeah, I'm arguing to buff the Phlog. I'm sure this video is going to go over well. But I've also been asking to nerf the Scorch Shot for the past like 5 years, so I think it balances out. Also, I think the handful of things that make the Phlog actually broken, like the flames passing through spawn doors at certain angles and the ability to cancel out of the taunt, should be fixed if possible. If those come down to fundamental game design problems, then honestly, I don't know. Through saying all this, I don't think the Phlog is a bad weapon. I mean, how many weapons in the game let you melt the entire enemy team just by holding down a button and running forward with this level of efficiency? But the fact that you basically need to abuse one of the most overpowered weapons in the game alongside it, and have a pocket medic shoved up your ass in order to pub stomp with it, means it leaves a lot to be desired, and the brainless playstyle it encourages might be pretty zen to some players, but for me who really enjoys combo pyro and the Dragon's Fury, it's not my cup of tea. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Phlog. I probably pissed off some more people with this one. Oh well. Until next time I piss you off, bye! You canceled it again! You utter— Zan?
Oh god, there's an entity here!
Zan, you didn't switch to explosive, did you? You didn't switch to explosive resist, did you? When that random crit rocket was heading for me.
I was on explosive, but then the beans got detached. Okay, fuck it, I'm just switch back to stuff.